it looks like there was another backstage incident involving CM Punk, this time in WWE. This, according to a WWE talent who was backstage with Punk at NXT. I'm going to let you listen to what they had to say. And also, we're going to talk about some news we have about AEW outbidding WWE for major free agent talents like Mercedes Mone, Kazuchika Okada, and Will Ospreay. All that and much more coming up in this video. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Okay, so this week, Booker T was on his Hall of Fame podcast. Great podcast, by the way, where Booker likes to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. This week, he mentioned something about seeing CM Punk backstage. And this has the entire wrestling world talking. So I'm just going to play the audio from the Hall of Fame podcast with Booker T, and then we're going to talk about it.
But I almost had like a little run-in with CM Punk. You know what I mean? The internet might want to pick that up. Me and CM Punk almost got into it at NXT this week. Yeah, so.
Okay, you'll tell me more later?
We'll talk about it later. I don't want to put it out there because they're going to pick it up and, run with it. But, yeah, I'll talk to you about that off there.
Okay, we'll talk later.
Okay, so Booker T, in the funniest way, calls out CM Punk, says that, I had a little bit of run-in with him. There was a little thing that went on between us backstage at NXT. I'm not going to put it out there, even though I literally just put it out there, which, say what you want about that situation. But, Booker is obviously alluding to, or at least saying that there was something that happened between himself and CM Punk backstage at NXT this past Tuesday. It was reported that Punk was, in fact, backstage at NXT. We did not see him on the show, but he was backstage, and presumably he was like helping talent, things like that. He's done that in the past, right? But Booker T coming out and saying this, right, has me of two minds, because obviously one thing we know about Booker T is that he likes to embellish the truth sometimes, and he likes to throw around some cap every now and then to keep things interesting, keep people talking about him and that kind of thing. And, he's promoting his podcast. Like, I don't fault him for that inherently. But at the same time, you also kind of have to look at Booker T, right? He's also someone who, he hasn't had the nicest thing to say about CM Punk in the past. Obviously, he praised him when he came back. But, there's, I'm not going to say history there, but there's especially when Punk was in AEW, there was, Booker was getting his stuff off. Anyway, but, I'm of two minds personally about this. Number one, right, whenever you hear CM Punk backstage incident, it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, I can see it happen, because if you look at his recent history, it's happened. You want to talk about All In London, where him and Jack Perry got into it allegedly, and he reportedly lunged himself at Tony Khan, whatever that means. And then that led to his ousting from AEW. Bryan Danielson, the person who for a long time was a close friend in the wrestling business of CM Punk, even said that, at a certain point, I did what had to be done. And the council that, came together to decide on CM Punk's fate in AEW decided that it was best if he was gone from the company. So, and then you have a brawl out where we've talked about that ad nauseum on this channel, but there is a history there, obviously. And when you have that history, you kind of have to talk, that's the reason we're talking about it. If it was just Booker T making a passing comment or something like that, it would be a different thing. But given Punk's history and the newsworthiness of, his departure from AEW, his original, injury and time off from AEW, whatever you want to call that, in 2022, it's something worth talking about. Now, on the flip side, right, how much of this is Booker T just working the fans, getting clicks for his podcast, and maybe, I don't know, working an angle to an extent. I don't know what ends that would be, because, we haven't seen Booker T wrestle, obviously, in a very long time. But, to me, it's almost too perfect, I guess, in a way that, he said this Like, yeah, me and CM Punk had a little bit of a run-in, and then, he just kind of like was like, yeah, I'll tell you offline. No, don't worry, Brad. I'll tell you offline. And then like you also have to wonder, like, is he going to come back on his podcast next week and be like, yeah, yeah, CM Punk and I had a run-in. We had a race backstage or something, like where he's just gonna be like, I fooled you, marks, and like I trolled you guys. How much of it is him just trolling, and like maybe he had like an interaction with CM Punk and it was like very cordial? We don't know, but obviously, like as I said, given Punk's history, it's worth talking about. Another thing that is worth talking about, in my view, is the state of pro wrestling free agency. Obviously, we had Mercedes Mone make her All Elite Wrestling debut this past Wednesday night on Dynamite. And along with that, we have heard some rumors, reports, innuendo about AEW potentially outbidding WWE for some major free agent talent. This was courtesy of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Here's the quote from Wrestling Observer newsletter. Quote, in all three cases of AEW signing Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, and Mercedes Mone, it was known that Tony Khan offered more money than WWE. WWE officials, who seemingly expected the lure of WWE and WrestleMania being enough of a deciding factor, ended up with it not being the case. This brings up a very interesting, discussion. Or two very interesting discussions. Number one, about like the money. Her name is Mercedes Mone. I know, I'm hilarious. But, it brings up the question about the money and like the fact that Tony Khan is willing to spend as much as it takes, to get these free agents. And it was also reported, I believe, from the Observer that, people were talking about like how Mercedes was it a $5 million per year contract or something like that. I don't know. Like, it was not as much as people out there are speculating per year. So just gonna put that out there for those of you who think that she got like paid like an absorbent amount of money. She got paid a good amount of money, but not not like the entire Brinks truck that Tony Khan has. But anyway, it brings up the conversation about money. We obviously know that AEW or that Mercedes was asking to be paid as one of the highest paid female talent in pro wrestling. And she was asking for, reportedly, according to Wrestling Observer, Becky Lynch levels of money. And that apparently did not happen in WWE. And that brings us to our second conversation of the lure of WWE and how much is that worth the talent like Mercedes, like Will Ospreay, like Kazuchika Okada. And in the case of Kazuchika Okada and Will Ospreay, it's like explicitly not as worthwhile, I think, to them as it would be to others. Obviously, Mercedes, we haven't heard directly from her too much about the negotiations with WWE or anything like that. But I assume it's a very similar thing, because especially considering she's done it. She's main evented Mania. She's held the belts there. She's done virtually everything there is to do in WWE. So, but like with Will Ospreay, it's like way more explicit, because he said that he did not, he did not want to go to WWE. He said that AEW was the perfect place for him because it was the place that would allow him to stay in England. It was the place that would allow him to work less. It was a place that would allow him to work a style that he wants to work, to still work New Japan dates, to get paid, to be on mainstream American television and become that big star. And when we talk about the lure of WrestleMania, the lure of WWE, there are always going to be people, and there should be. There are always going to be people who are going to be, lured in by all of that. But where AEW, and why AEW and other companies are so important and their success is so important is because when you have alternatives, when you have secondary companies, when you have, companies like AEW, TNA, it expands the dreams for wrestling fans, or for wrestlers, I should say. It expands, what's possible and what people want to do. And it expands horizons. Like, Mercedes Mone has accomplished, like I said before, everything there is to do in WWE. But then you look at AEW, and that's a new challenge. And that right there, that is why AEW is so important, because you have the opportunity to have new accomplishments. You have the opportunity to tell more stories, bigger stories potentially, with other stars that you have not wrestled before. And that right there is great for wrestling, because it's great for the fans who get to watch the product. It's great for the wrestlers who get paid. And tell those stories. And it's great for the business as a whole, because wrestling becomes more popular. So to me, I mean, like, the lure of WrestleMania and all that kind of stuff, like, it is important for WWE to push that, but it's also important that for them as a business to like cough up the money as well, because there is an alternative now, and a legitimate alternative that is offering legitimate money, that has a legitimate TV contract, that is going to get a raise, a significant raise by all reports in that contract. So there is a world beyond WWE, believe it or not, but well, I guess we'll see what happens in the future. There are other free agents whose contracts, I should say, are reportedly coming up. Some of them, I think, are going to end up staying in WWE. Some of them might not. Go check out some of my other videos for information on that. Also, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let me know what you guys think about all this, the CM Punk backstage incident, the Mercedes Mone, Kazuchika Okada, and Will Ospreay news that AEW outbid WWE, apparently. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And until next time, be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.